moved into the Mac house. Only had like a suitcase and a few backpacks. That I'll come back to that later. Boss man's laughing because he knows what I'm talking about. And I thought I was prepared, for everything. I went through the Adult Teen Challenge program, and it was a blessing. But I came out of it with the thought that I had recovered, that I had arrived to a point to where I wasn't going to struggle with things anymore, And I think that's a misconception that a lot of people have about recovery and about being saved, is that things are just going to be all of a sudden easy, that you're not going to struggle. And I, from my experience, I find that to be actually the opposite case. I think recovery is far harder than addiction is. And being saved and trying to follow Christ is way harder than going along with the world. And so I really kind of set myself up, And I'd always had a drug problem, so I never imagined that. I never really had a drinking problem, so I never really gave myself a chance really to become an alcoholic. And so the thing that really started off was me jumping into relationships. And as soon as I got out of the program, it's like most guys, you get out of prison, you get out of jail, you get out of a program, you get out of rehab, and the first thing you want is you want a girlfriend. And, I thought that that's what I wanted, that's what I needed. And, I ended up in some hairy situations as somebody who lived at Faith Mission and worked at Faith Mission, being in a relationship with somebody that I shouldn't have been. And even with the counsel of some of my mentors, like Mr. JD, I didn't listen. And things, didn't end very well for her or for I. And that kind of led to another relationship, one that is still difficult for me to talk about. So I had a best friend in the program, Adult Teen Challenge, and I had known him for, we had been in the program together for about 7 months. He got there, about four or 5 months after I did. And he introduced me to his wife, and she would come to visit him when he was here in Brenham, and of course I was already out. And it was weird because he encouraged us to spend time together when he wasn't able to leave the program to go visit, to go see her. And I never imagined in my wildest dreams that things would transpire the way they did. And so I ended up falling in love with her, and we ended up having an affair while he was still in the program. And then when he ended up relapsing, not because of this, during the affair, I used that as justification. And we had all these plans. They had kids together and everything, but we still had these plans that we were going to live a life together. I look back at it now and I realize how stupid and fleshly that was. But that really, I mentioned my grandfather passing away and that flip being switched. And I mentioned the first time that I used a needle with opiates, a switch being flipped, and you could say that this was another switch moment. I flipped a switch in my head. And so I reached out to another brother from Adult Teen Challenge, and to confide in him. So I went over to his apartment, and I'm thinking that we're just going to be kicked back, hanging out. And so I'm spilling my guts, and I'm even in tears, so I'm not even really paying attention to what he's doing. And all of a sudden I hear, and I look over, and he sticks this mirror in my face, and I'm like, oh man. And I didn't even hesitate. I didn't even know what it was. I didn't, the thought process wasn't like, oh, hey, what is this, man? What are you doing? It was just, okay. And so I hit it. And, kind of the rest is history as far as that goes. And so, but I should mention that at that point I was already starting to drink. I mentioned that I didn't really have a drinking problem before. And so I thought that I could have a couple drinks, on a Friday night after a long, hard week, and, that it would be okay and that there would be no consequences. And within probably 2 weeks, I was drinking all day, every day. And this is going to be some difficult stuff for some people here at Faith Mission to hear, but I've been given permission by the big boss to share it anyway. I was driving around a car full of Teen Challenge guys, picking them up and taking them back under the influence of alcohol. And while I'm having an affair with, one of my best friend's wives who was in the program. So that shame and the guilt that I had before paled in comparison. Because even in the streets, the bro code, you didn't do stuff like that. You didn't, and I don't want to get vulgar, but you especially never fell in love with your homie's girl. Like, some things were passable, but that just was unforgivable. So I internalized that. And it put me mentally in a very, 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 very dark place. So, wow, I got way ahead of myself there. And the hypocrisy, because I was still, I talked to you guys about when I got saved that the preacher was talking about being a fake Christian, and I was still going to church. I was still working for a Christian nonprofit. I was still, quacking like a duck and walking like a duck, but I sure wasn't a duck. And that just it almost got to the point to where I was like, what, I deserve to be miserable. That's really the mindset that I was developing during that time. And I was just so consumed by my fleshly desires that I didn't even really take into consideration anymore what I was doing and the people that I was hurting. So as things got worse, I began stealing a lot, and taking advantage of the fact that I had access to just about anywhere at Faith Mission, and it was part of fueling the addiction, but it was also part of me trying to find any and all escape. Like, I didn't care what it was. I didn't care if it was drugs. I didn't care if it was stealing. I didn't care if it was sleeping with somebody's girl. Like, I just wanted the rush. I wanted to constantly be outside of myself. I didn't want to feel what I was feeling. And I felt that whatever consequences came, that I deserved them. So eventually I got caught red-handed stealing from Faith Mission. Getting myself fired and evicted all in one fell swoop. And I mentioned that I showed up to Faith Mission with a couple backpacks and a suitcase. I left Faith Mission with, probably 3 carloads, at least, of trash bags full of clothes and all kinds of stuff. And you want to talk about an example of grace. This man right here is a perfect example of exemplifying God's grace. So I began living out of my car at that point. I was able to get a job. I was working down the street, which was not a very good environment for somebody on the level that I was. And so I was working 512s, and it was funny because the more I worked, the more drugs I needed to stay up and going, and the more drugs I needed, the more money I needed, so the more I needed to work, so the more drugs I needed, so the more I needed to work, so the more drugs I needed. And eventually I burned myself out after about 3 months of working at this place. But I was making good enough money to where I got my credit back up in the streets. And if anybody knows, if you're somebody who's a regular customer, you can get a lot of things on credit to a certain extent. And so that's what I was started doing. Your addiction has levels, and the amount that my addiction leveled up from 2016 to 2018 was probably more so than what I had went in the 16, 17 years that I went from 16 to my 20s. Because I was doing copious amounts of methamphetamine. And it's funny because a lot of people would be shocked about, well, I say that, it's probably pretty apparent now, but back then people would have been shocked about how much drug and criminal activity was going on in this area. And, most of the time I was right in the center of it. So summer of 2018 was, it got rough. I got involved in gang activity, got back on the needle. Had a car wreck, which I busted my front windshield, which gave police, the right to pull me over at any whim, and they did. And during this time, I had multiple ODs. So I want to share a really crazy, scary story with you. So, fentanyl was not, people weren't aware of fentanyl like they are now. And so I can look back now and I can see where there were times where I probably got a batch of meth that was cut with fentanyl. And so there was one time where, I was doing my runs because since I still had a car, my hustle was, usually picking up and delivering for people. And so I just got done and I'd been up for like 3 or 4 days straight. And I don't know why I went to Walmart, but I went to Walmart at like 11 o'clock on a Thursday night. And I wake up, my car's running, my seatbelt's on, my driver's side window's is open, and I'm hanging out of the car like this. And these officers come up to me. And I remember being terrified, not because the cops showed up, but because when they asked me my name, I literally could not tell them my legal name. In fact, the only thing I could tell them was that I was on the planet Earth. That's the only thing that I could recall in my head at that point in time. And luckily, I wish I could remember his name, but I can't. This officer was cool, man, because I had a backpack sitting in the front seat, loaded, and he could tell that I was under the influence of something. So I mean, he had the right to search my car, but he didn't. But he could tell by the fear in my eyes that I was in trouble. And so he told me, he was like, "Look, man, you can go to jail or you can go in that ambulance." I was like, "All right, I'll go in that ambulance." I'm like, "Don't take me to jail." So I went and spent the night in the ambulance, and come to find out, I had all these trace substances in my system that I had no idea. I mean, one of them was even GHB, and so that was a rather scary experience. But the crazy thing is that happened at least 3 or 4 times. Same thing happened at Max's Donuts at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning. Almost same exact situation, where I woke up and couldn't tell them my name, and couldn't tell them where I'd been, who I was, or anything like that without showing them my ID. And, just the simple fact that I survived that is a miracle in and all of itself. And, I mentioned before that I look back now and I believe that was prayer, because I used to be conceited. I used to think that it was my genetics, that I had a naturally higher tolerance than most people, and that I could handle more dope and more drinks than most people. I don't know if that was necessarily the whole truth, but that's the way I feel. So it made me feel bulletproof to survive these circumstances. So you would think that a situation like that would scare you enough that you'd be like, all right, I'm gonna get back on straight street, that's enough. I've knocked on death's door 3 or 4 times at that point, just in probably a 6-month time period. But no, I wanted to keep going because I felt like I was on top of things. And so during this same summer, like I said, I ended up having multiple arrests. I ended up getting my heart broke. I ended up in a relationship, and she had girls, and getting in a relationship when somebody has kids and you're both broken, and so I ended up really falling in love with her kids and thinking that maybe that was the one thing that could change me. But neither of us were willing to let go of our substances, so that didn't really work out. So that broke my heart, leaving that situation the way that it did. And then towards the end of the summer, my grandma passed away. And I mentioned my grandparents before, and I mentioned my grandfather's passing away. And, that my grandfather passing away really did a number on me. So when my mom sent out a text, or actually she sent me, because I didn't have a phone. I mean, I had a phone, but I didn't have a number. So she had to hit me with Wi-Fi, so she would message me on Facebook Messenger. And you get, when you get back within service and you've missed stuff, it'll pop up on your little, on your lock screen, and it'll give you just an abbreviation of the message. And all I seen was, grandma's in the hospital, they're calling the family in, ... And I clicked off that phone and disappeared for about 7 or 8 days. And to be honest with you, I don't even know what I did where I went. I just know that after about 6 or 7 days after that, I woke up in Fayetteville, Texas. And come to find out that my grandmother had passed away. And the only person that she asked for by name on her deathbed was Charles. And I wasn't there. And, you know, again, that switch, it's crazy because you flip that switch and you're like, man, I've already flipped the switch so many times, I can't get any deeper or darker, but I did, and I was able to finally, thankfully, make it home for the funeral service, but I had no business. I ended up passing out in the bathroom of the funeral home, and had family that, you know, they were more worried about me overdosing at the funeral home than they were worried about burying my grandmother, and so that was a horrific experience for my family, one that I still struggle with forgiving myself for. But so I came back because I told you I'd been arrested. I was already out on bond. I was already out on 2 bonds. From June and September of 2018, I was arrested 5 times. I don't know what the record is now, but I was told by a couple of the jailers that I held the record during their tenure. And I mean, but that was of at least 24 interactions with law enforcement, because I mentioned that I had been wrecked. And so I had a busted windshield, which it, you know, impeded my view from the driver's seat. So, I mean, you know, it gave them a reason to pull me over. So, I mean, I can't tell you how many citations I had. I mean, it was like $1,200 worth of citations in that little bit of time. And, you know, I went to jail for a possession charge, and I was in there, and they called me out for a visitation. I'm like, man, I didn't put nobody on my visitation list, and I've only been here for, I don't even know if I had made it out of the tank, the detox tank. But anyway, so they called me in there, and I walk in there, and he's not here, but it was Pastor Randy and Miss Dahlia had come to see me. And I'll admit this, I don't give a dang what people think, but I bawled my eyes out, man. I did. I broke down, and you know, we talked on the phone and touched the glass, and you know, he told, you know, just reaffirmed some things that, you know, they still cared about me and were willing to help me in whatever way. And you know, my selfish addiction, man, I told him, I was like, no, Rev, I'm good. You know, like I appreciate you, you know, but I wasn't gonna lie to him, you know. I mean, I lied to everybody else, you know, so I was like, no, I'm good, Rev. I know that I told him I'm good, but I don't know what I told him after that. But I turned down their help because I wasn't ready to give it up, and I wasn't. So I ended up getting out again, and that was the 3rd bond. This was a felony charge. The other 2 have been misdemeanors, borderline felony. So then I got pulled over again last time, and it was, you know, I just ended up in these crazy situations. I let this dude drive my car because he didn't tell me that he was on the run. So I let him drive my car, and so here we are driving through downtown Brenham, and of course, you know, when you're on meth and you're running from the police, and I can speak from experience after the situation, that you don't think, like you really don't, you just react. And so he reacted in my car, almost wrecked us in the middle of town in AutoZone. And, you know, I was in shock, man, like, cause I didn't even know that the dude was on the run. So he jumped out and took off, and they didn't get him. I was sitting there, I was at that point, I took off my seatbelt, I had a pack of things, and I swallowed them, and I got out of the car and put my hands in the air, you know, and went to jail. And, you know, the people that have been helping me get bonded out, they were like, well, we've had enough. So I sat in there until sometime in December. My public pretender, my public defender.
Yeah, you said it right.
Was, you know, telling me all the things that they were offering me. And he was like, look, man, he was like, they didn't search the car. He was like, so they didn't find this, I'm not gonna incriminate myself, so they didn't find this, they didn't find that. He was like, so you need to sign. And I'm like, sign for what?
I was like, how many years? He's like, no, they're gonna adjudicate you on probation. I'm like, are you sure? And he was like, yeah, that's why I'm telling you to sign, because he said, apparently they haven't ran your record, because I have felony arrests in Kentucky, and I went to prison for multiple felony charges. In Indiana, I'm a habitual. This would have been my 4th strike. And so I want to tell a side story that may be uncomfortable for some people, but it is what it is. It's real. And so I was sitting in court, and there was this young kid. He was 19, 20 years old. Same charges. Possession of methamphetamine under a gram, whoop-de-whoop, and no criminal background, no history. They were giving him 15 years. Wow. That was the lowest they were willing to give him, is 15 years. Can you guess what his skin color was?
It was a little darker than yours.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing how that works out? So, again, I talk about shame and guilt because I've always been empathetic, and that really bothered me, and I began to think about my own choices. When you're sober, you really think clearly. But, again, that's just something that I bring up because I feel like that's a big part of our system, and we don't want to talk about it because it's uncomfortable for some of us, but it's still the truth. So I ended up telling them what they wanted to hear, so I could get out and get high, and that's what happened. I mean, literally as soon as they released me from jail, I hit them streets running. Never reported probation, never did anything I was supposed to. Went right back to using. Now, prior to getting arrested, I had made a deal with somebody to sell my car for drugs, and since I went to jail, they felt like that had null and voided. I did not realize that you were sitting up here. That's one of my professors, by the way.
Amen.
Wow. I'm glad you're hearing this now instead of before you gave me my grades. Woo. Okay, where was I? So I lost the car. So now I'm really homeless. I used to tell people when I was driving around my car I was homeless. I wasn't homeless. I had a home. It was just on wheels. You ain't homeless until you ain't got no wheels. That's homeless. And so I was homeless, and I spent a lot of time in these parks, man. I spent a lot of time in these parks. I'd sleep in the bathrooms of the softball, baseball fields over here in Holt Park, and oh man. You want to talk about some uncomfortable situations, people coming in to clean them. And of course, I'm passed out. And anyway, so I actually ended up, Faith Mission had a warehouse over here. I might go over just a little bit, boss. Faith Mission had a warehouse over here. And I knew where it was, and I knew how to sneak into it. So I actually ended up posted up there for a while. And during that time, I actually even reached out to Boss Man, and about getting help, and of course they were more than willing. Him and Miss Susan were more than willing to help me out, and so but it was right around that time of the month where food stamps were supposed to hit, and they hadn't hit yet, and I was, God bless you, and I was praying that please God help me, let me get help before these food stamps hit, because I knew what time it was, so. This man had went out of his way to help me. And so I was over at South, Miss Susan had gotten me some shoes and stuff, and I found out my food stamps hit, and he hadn't showed up yet. And so I told Miss Susan, I said, I'm gonna walk across the street to Dollar General and I'll be back. And I didn't come back. And I bring that up because I was sincere at that moment. I hear a lot of people talk about, they talk about that they're ready, and I just don't think that they are. No, I promise you, a lot of times when they say that they're ready, in that moment of clarity, they're ready. They just know. They know as soon as that hook is set out, they're gonna snag on that thing every time, hook, line, and sinker. And that was me, man. I had multiple sober conversations, with my mom, and just, I truly wanted to help, and so that's why I bring that up. So then shortly after that, I got busted living at or crashing at the warehouse. And the guy who found me told me that that he wanted to shoot me. And I shared that to say that that's how much of a different person I was. Because he had known me since I'd been here at Faith Mission, and continues to be a relevant person in my life. We go to church together. So now I'm on the run from the law. I'm on the run from probation. Okay, so I say I'm on the run from the law. I didn't mention. So I had a CT at Walmart because I had a bad habit of getting high and going in there and shoplifting. I had gotten arrested 3 times. Those were 2 of the 5 arrests. So I got arrested again while I'm out on probation, where I have not reported yet, and I get picked up again. Well, I don't know how this happened, but I got arrested on a Friday night. They processed my bond paperwork and all that before Monday morning, and I was released at like 5 a.m. Monday morning for probation officer up. So nobody had reported the fact that I had not reported on probation. So I got out. So I was on the run from the law because I had not only violated our probation by not showing up and reporting, I had also picked up another case. So, and I was on the run from God, truly. I mean, I thought I was, I thought I was running from him, thought I was hiding from him. But he was there the whole time because otherwise I wouldn't be alive.
Right.
And I was running from the pain of my shame. All the things that I talked about, it was like a decay inside of me. And it was growing, and it was eating me from the inside out. So I had a buddy from Acres Homes out in H-Town, and so I hit him up and I was like, hey man, I gotta split fast, bro. Like, can you come get me? So he came and got me. And he a lot of people talk about, oh, well, those people ain't your friends, Well, this guy had started out as my plug, and he had gotten to know me, and we had developed a relationship, and he cut me off. And I'm like, I was like, what's all that about? And so me and him actually became really good friends, and God used him to save me multiple times. So I ended up, he helped me get to downtown Houston because, again, I had the intention of checking myself into the Star of Hope. I don't know if anybody of you are familiar, but it's a shelter down there, and I'm actually glad that I didn't end up going there because it's pretty rough. But I had the intention of getting help. Again, I had the intention of getting help. That was the whole reason why he took me to Houston. He knew that there was more resources down there and people wouldn't ask questions. So while I was on the streets of Houston, man, people say you see shadow people. Your skin crawls when you're on meth. No, I seen demons. Like I legitimately seen demons. They were in the form of people. Some of them. Some of them were self-manifested. I truly believe that when you experience things like psychosis, that you become more aware of the spiritual warfare aspect of what's going on around you. And as somebody who was saved, I believe that I was saved even though I was way out there, because I still cried out to God. It was just, I didn't really have any hope, and I didn't really expect him to save me. And if I'm being honest, I don't think I wanted him to save me. I felt like I deserved it. I really did. So I seen a lot of stuff. I did. I was eating out of trash cans when I did eat, I tell the story. I found a to-go box sitting along the side of a curb one night. And I mean, this is downtown Houston, a 90-something degree temperatures. And it was food. Well, I was so hungry, I didn't even, my thought process didn't even kick in. And so I just started scarfing, and all of a sudden I started smelling something dead. I mean, it smelled like roadkill that had been sitting out alongside the highway for a while. And then I realized that it was the meat that I was eating had been sitting outside and decaying and rotting for that long. So of course, naturally I threw it up and kept going. But I mean, that's just how desperate I was. I wasn't bathing. And most of you know I'm a clean person. I may not be the best looking. I may not be the richest. I may not be the smartest, but I bet you I'm one of the best smelling and the cleanest. And you just can't do that when you're homeless. You can't do that when you're homeless in the streets, taking bird baths in the downtown library bathroom. So, You know, and the sleep deprivation, man. I mean, I was going weeks at a time without sleep. And, you know, I remember saying that before, and I would crash out for like 6 hours because I had a place to stay. You know, I'd crash out for 6 hours, and then I'd get up and I'd go again for a couple more weeks. Well, this one, yeah, that ain't the case in the streets, man, because the thing about them streets is between the rats and the other homeless people, man, you can't get caught slipping in a group of people, because if you get caught slipping, and even if you got a hat or anything, and it's not attached to your body, it's gone. I promise you, it's gone. Either the rat's going to eat it, or the people are going to take it. So I was constantly looking over my shoulder and constantly struggling to just stay alive. So I'm going to share this story, even though it's a little long. But so anyway, so long story short, I ended up in a situation where I've been up for weeks. I was severely sleep deprived, hadn't ate. It was an extremely hot day, and I had been with some people who hit a lick. They didn't tell me they were hitting a lick, so the cops showed up, and I'm, you know, like, what are you talking about? So then I ended up running from these cops, even though I had wasn't had any part in the situation. So I ended up downtown, and I was convinced that the entire city of Houston, Texas was after me. I mean, literally, I was literally convinced that every single person that I was coming in contact with was some kind of undercover or something that was trying to set me up. So I ended up running all the way on a bicycle. I ended up riding my bicycle all the way out to Memorial Park. And I thought, well, I'm going to ditch the bike so it looks like I wrecked, and I'm going to run out in the woods, and they're not going to find me. So I run all the way out in the woods, and I guarantee you I probably ran at least 2 miles, full sprint, and I'm shedding everything. By the time I got to a stopping point, the only thing I had on was my pants, my phone, and a notebook that I had on me. Because I wanted to have a notebook on me in case if somebody found me dead, and that I had a note from my mom, you know, in there. So I wanted them to, first of all, be able to identify me, and second of all, I wanted my mom to know how I felt in case that was, you know, how it turned out. So I went out and I found this animal burrow, you know, inside of a bush, and they had dug it out. And so I climbed up in this burrow, and it was starting to be sundown now. And I pulled out the notebook, pulled out my phone, I pulled out my SIM card, battery, separated it all, buried it in the mud. And I did snow, good snow. And I buried it in the mud. And as I'm doing this, I am hearing the choppers, I am hearing the dogs, I am hearing everything. I mean, to me, all hell is breaking loose because of me. And so I had dug myself in there, and I had made up my mind that I was either A, going to prison for the rest of my life, or I was going to die. Because I had ran myself so hard under those situations that I tell Bossman all the time that I didn't fully come back this time. You know, when I got clean the first time, I came back. I didn't fully come back. Some pieces were left. And this was one of those situations where pieces of me physiologically and chemically were left behind. The psychosis got so bad before I finally passed out that after it got dark, I was convinced that there was a dog from me to the end of that table. And I finally realized that I was having psychosis when I couldn't see the dog anymore, but I could hear him and feel him, and I was like, oh, okay, you know, I'm completely tripping.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, I had that notebook, and I wrote my mom a goodbye letter because I was not anticipating waking up. So I passed out for like 14 hours, came up out of the woods, and I don't know if you guys know Memorial. It's nice. People ain't walking around in just pants, no socks, no shoes. When I got on that bus, man, I was like something from The Walking Dead. I really did. I look back at that now. Oh, and the crazy thing is I had, you know, I was so skinny. I was like 169 when I got clean. I'm like 280, 300 right now.
That's what's up.
I had my 2 front belt loops on a size 29 pant tied together. And so it looked like I didn't have a zipper. So I got on that bus, you know, and of course people are, you know, making comments, and I'm like, no, it's, anyway. So, I mean, you know, I bring all that up because when you're 16 years old and you start using drugs, you know, people say things about addicts, and I get it because you don't understand, but you don't wake up at 16 years old and say, that's who I want to be when I grow up. That's what I want to do, you know. them drugs have an effect on you. Okay, so man, we're getting overtime here. So let's fast track. So I had been out in the streets of Houston for like 3 or 4 months at this point, and I know this seems like a lot, but that's all I'm telling you. You know, there's levels of this stuff, and I was getting to a point to where I knew it was not sustainable anymore. So I had made the reservation in my mind that I'm done. I'm going to do as many drugs as I can, as fast as I can, with the hopes that they kill me, because I had suicidal ideations, but since I was saved, I could not bring myself to kill myself. I couldn't. I contemplated it, sometimes day and night. And so I was just hoping that next shot, that next high would just be it. Well, my mom had not heard from me because I'm a mama's boy, so I would check in with her every once in a while when I would have Wi-Fi. She hadn't heard from me, so she sent my dad to come down. He came all the way down from Salem, Indiana to Houston, Texas, not having a clue where I was at. He just knew that where the Wi-Fi spots that I'd been, because my mom knew that. So he went down to Wheeler Station and was looking for me. And again, I don't know if you guys know Houston, but Wheeler Station is about as rough as it gets. They call it zombie land. And he's down there, clean cut, nice shoes, nice watch. And the HPD was like, "Hey, bro, you're in the wrong part of town, man. You need to." And so he told them his story. And my dad's a very emotional cat. Many of you have been blessed to get to know him, and he's a very emotional person. And so he was very emotional. So there's these people called the Pit Crew, and they go around and they help homeless people who OD and end up in situations like that. Because nobody calls 911 when the homeless dude ODs on the sidewalk, sadly. So the cops went to him. They're like, "Hey man, you need to go get this dude because he's about to be robbed or killed in broad daylight." So he told this lady his story. He'd given himself about 4 days to find me, and this was day 3 or 4. I wish I could say that it was day 3 because that would sound cooler. I'm not sure that it was, but he was getting to the point to where he was running out of time because he had to come back and go to work. So this lady agreed to help him. She had a pretty face, and so she sent me a message request on Facebook. And most of you understand the situation when you're out. So when I seen that pretty face, I answered the message request, and so she just came out the gate and told me like what she was doing, and I didn't believe her. Again, the psychosis, I was like, "There's no way this is a real." So I called my homeboy from Maker's Homes, one I talked about, and I was like, "Hey, bro, like my dad's all the way down here," and he was like, "Man, if you don't answer that girl back and tell her where you're at," he was like, "because you know what I would give for my dad to come down here
right.
in that type of situation and look for me, man."
Right.
He was like, "You need to at least find out if that's what it is." I was like, "All right, man, you're right." So I did. Except I gave her an ultimatum. I said, "I'll meet you at the Taco Bell on Hillcrest and Westheimer, but you got to buy me food first." So they pulled up in this van, and it's like a CIA CSI van. So again, the psychosis. So I even laid back. So eventually, when they both got out, they were both pretty, and I was like, "Well, if I'm going to jail, at least they're pretty." So I got in the car, they fed me, they took me to meet my dad. That was a crazy miracle because, again, the whole time I'm trying to commit suicide and God's like, no, that's just not my plan. Mm-hmm. So after spending like 2 or 3 days with him in the hotel, eating like $160 worth of groceries, sleeping for probably 48, 50 something hours and however many days, I finally got checked into the 24-hour club. Because I meant to go to Open Door Mission, but because I was detoxing so bad, they were like, "No, man, you can't. You got to go detox somewhere else before you come here because we're not going to have you die on our watch." So I went there for like 3 weeks. Finally got into the program, but I still had reservations, man. I still had this mindset that I was going to get clean, get some sleep, get some food in me, get my weight up, and then I'm just going to go back to selling drugs and just use. A weekend warrior. Yeah, just a little bit, and that was my mindset going into this program. But you know what? God, my Father, man, He used that place and time to reestablish my relationship with Him, and reset my foundation on Christ. And so I completed that program in February of 2020 as COVID was kicking off. Now, mind you, I had been on the run this whole time. I hadn't told these people that until I got ready to walk out the program. I was scared, man. You know, like, I mean, I had such a rap sheet prior to all these new convictions, and then being in Texas and knowing what I know about the Texas judicial system, I'm like, man, that's it. You know, it's game over. So I told them that, and so I went and turned myself in after I completed this program. You want to talk about one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life is willingly walking into a jail, knowing that you're going to be incarcerated, and you have no idea for how long and what the situation is going to be. And then to top it off, the second or third day you get in there is when the COVID lockdown happened, and you want to talk about terrifying a group of people that are already scared and terrified as it is. I don't care what anybody says. Most people who are locked up are scared because they're away from their loved ones. They don't know the situation going on. Whoop-de-whoop. Everybody can act hard, but most of us that have been there know the truth. And and during that time, you know, I was actually even able to surrender myself to God a little bit more because I met this guy in there and he helped me grow. And so it turned out to be a blessing. Well, 3 weeks went by and no courts. I mean, nothing was moving. So like nobody was going to court or anything. So I had actually had a lawyer while I was open door mission, a Houston attorney, take up my case pro bono because he was in recovery. He heard my story and he wanted to do what he could. So they got me out. They got me a PR bond while the whole thing was going on. And so I went back to open door mission. During that time, I was able to get a job with my church, which helped me pay off all my back debt that I had to Washington County. It was funny because when I showed up to probation, you know, I brought her like $2,000 cash. I didn't know. She was like, "What are you doing with this?" I was like, "I'm paying off the money I owe y'all." She said, "First of all, you need to have that in a money order." And she was like, "I don't want to know where you got that amount of money all at the same time." I learned a hard lesson though with taxes that you shouldn't tell them that you're a contractor because you get all your money at once, but then you have to pay it back later. However, it allowed me to pay back my probation stuff within a very short period of time. I mean, I was like $4,000 or $5,000 in debt with them. So I got my probation reinstated as if I had been on probation the whole time that I was on the run. Because I've been able to show them the certificate of completion from the program, you know, me paying off all my money, clean drug test, blah, blah, blah. So my mentor pushed me to reach back out to Faith Mission, which I was not. I mean, I never imagined in my life that I would ever come back to Brenham, Texas, let alone be back as a part of Faith Mission after what I had done. And he pushed me, and I reached back out to Boss Man, and again, that grace, man, that grace. They welcomed me back with open arms, and so I left my job in Houston and came back here and enrolled back into the work program, which is then when I enrolled to Blinn College, which is when I met this guy. And I had a dream of being an architect ever since I was 14 years old. So that's what I thought I wanted to do. Again, now, mind you, you know, everything that had been going on in my life, all these things, I didn't think I was mentally capable, you know. I was like, there's no way I'm going to get through school. So I just started off really slow, and I prayed a lot, you know, I really did. I asked the Holy Spirit to help me with tests and studying and stuff like that. And I was able to be successful. And so during that time, I discovered that I have a passion for academia, for learning, for knowledge. And I love history. So during that period of time, I changed my major to history, and I decided that I wanted to pursue being a professor of history at the college level. So discharged early from probation in November of 2022. First time being off paper since I was 16 years old. I mean, really being off paper since I was 16 years old. And I really feel like God has been pulling me towards the professor thing. So I applied to Texas A&M last year, and
I got accepted, but I literally did everything I could unintentionally to screw it up. I really did. And it was funny because I think I told you this and I told a few other people this, and I was like, it's funny. I was like, I wonder if it wasn't by design, because it shows all the more of God's grace, because I really did everything I could to screw it up. I really did. I turned it in at the last minute. I didn't complete everything I was supposed to complete because I didn't read all the fine print, and the list goes on. And I still got accepted. So like, you can't tell me that wasn't God. And for me, it was affirmation that I was heading in the right direction. So recently completed my first semester at Texas A&M with 2 A's and 2 B's. Graduated magna cum laude from Blinn College this past semester.
I was there.
And talking about God bringing things full circle. I'm trying to wrap this up, boss. I know I feel the heat. I mentioned that Rev was the only person that came and touched the glass when I was in jail. So most of you know, but some of you may not, that Rev is a part of the Blinn Board of Trustees. So he's on that stage. And you want to talk about things coming full circle. Being able to hug that man on stage, getting my diploma, after he was, one of the only people that reached out to me when I was in that situation. And still didn't give up on me, even though I shut the door in his face.
Right.
Because I did. I was like, no, I'm good, Red. I appreciate you going out of your way to help me, but I still didn't accept his help. So my goal now is to go to grad school, to get at least 1 master's and a PhD. Because I want to be a college professor, I'm keeping an open mind, because every time you think that you have a plan and you think that it's aligning with God, God is like, oh, you know what? That's not quite what I had in mind, right? But I feel like after a lot of conversations with wonderful professors like Mr. Lehman over my time, that I am heading in the right direction, because I feel like it would put me in a great position to help people who are going through similar situations. College kids especially, in my circumstances, kind of allows me to be relatable to a lot more people than some professors would be, especially in my background. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is that, talking about God bringing things full circle. So my mugshot was in the paper a lot during 2018. And so recently, I was blessed with the opportunity to kind of plug Faith Mission and their work program and being in the paper.
Front page.
Yeah. So, that's all God, man. That's all God, because I tell people all the time, man, like, I'm a knucklehead. Like, I still struggle. I talk to people who have been delivered, and that is such a blessing. That's just not my story. It's not. I struggle every day. I think about it every day. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about getting high. And I'm very transparent now. Sometimes to my default, because I say things a little too transparent, a little too real, a little too raw in the wrong settings and situations. I think part of my filter was left back from him, so I'm praying that God restores my filter a little bit better. But I told my mom, that if it wasn't for the consequences, of drugs and alcohol, man, I wish I could be that guy that on a Friday after work, has 1 cold beer and goes to bed and gets up and goes to work and gets up and goes to church. I'm not that guy. Like, at the bottom of that bottle is a needle, is a rock, is a crack pipe, is a story. It's all together. It's all one thing with me. And so, the desire is lessened. The triggers aren't near as severe, but it's still there. And I like Paul with God, telling him that his grace is sufficient. I believe that that's my story. As hard as that is, and as painful as it can be still, that is part of my story. And the other thing is that, I still struggle with self-forgiveness. It's some days are easier. Some days, I have to do it multiple times a day. I mentioned earlier, that's why I say that recovery, for me, is so much harder than being high. Because, man, I told you all at the beginning last week that you didn't have to teach me how to be bad. I did bad all on my own. I crashed my own car without you taking the wheel. I can do that very well. It's hard for me to do right. It's hard for me to be on straight street. It's hard for me to have the discipline of, wanting to go out and get high and instead of staying in and doing homework at 9 o'clock on a Friday night when I would rather be out running around. So that's why, the saying, by the grace of God, there go I, resonates with me, because, man, it is so true. It is only by His grace that I am even still breathing and standing here today and have the aspirations and dreams and goals that I have, not just for myself, but, the thing is for me is if my story can at least help one person, then all the suffering and the pain and everything will have been worth it. I truly believe that. Okay, so I just want to leave you guys with this last scripture. Ephesians chapter 2, verses 1 through 10. As for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins, in which you used to live when you followed the ways of this world and of the ruler of the kingdom of the air. Because a lot of people forget who the kingdom or who the ruler is of this kingdom. The spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient. All of us also lived among them at one time, gratifying the cravings of our flesh and following its desires and thoughts. Like the rest, we were by nature deserving of wrath. But because of His great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ, even when we were dead in transgressions. It is by grace you have been saved. And God raised us up with Christ and seated us with Him in the heavenly realms in Christ Jesus, in order that in the coming ages He might show the incomparable riches of His grace expressed in His kindness to us in Christ Jesus. For it is by grace you have been saved, through faith, and this is not from yourselves, it is the gift of God, not by works, that no one can boast. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. Thank you. Let me pray us out the right way. I got a little excited. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you for this excitement that you put in me, for your grace and your mercy. I ask that you would help me to better exemplify your grace and mercy by showing it to others. It is so easy to get caught up in myself and to forget what you have delivered me from, and all the grace and mercy you have shown me throughout my life when I was just an absolute knucklehead. So help me to show that grace and mercy. And I thank you for a place like Faith Mission that does exemplify your grace, your mercy, and your love, and that truly is the hands and feet of your Son Jesus. And I thank you for great men like Mr. J.D. and Pastor Randy and Mr. Lawrence and so many others that have been involved with this organization. I just ask that you would continue to strengthen them and bless them and empower them to continue to carry out your will in this community. I thank you for my story. I thank you for all the stories that are in this room. And I thank you for opportunities like this. In Jesus' name, amen.